Hey, small business people and lovers of good stories in general. Welcome to episode 35 of Small Business War Stories. Today's a really cool, interesting episode. I got to sit down with Mike Raspatello in Chicago, Illinois. And Mike is a founder of October, which is really a high-end publication and events company focused on the craft beer industry. So what Cigar Aficionado is to cigars, or what Pitchfork is to music, they want to be to the craft beer industry. They saw that there was an opportunity and they went for it and seized it. It's a really interesting venture because it's backed by ZX Ventures, which is the venture arm of Anheuser-Busch, or what's now AB InBev. But it is not beholden to AB InBev, so they're their own independent publication. So we talk about what that means, the conflicts of interest, and how they are an independent publication building their own reputation as an authority in the craft beer space. And they also work with Pitchfork, which is, again, a very well-known music publication. So it's a really interesting story, and it's great to hear about Mike's ambitions with leading this company, this venture that is not only focused on publishing great content about craft beer, but also focused on putting together events and bringing together musicians. I'll let him tell a story. It's really, really cool. This was part of the Soul of America tour, and as part of that, it's sponsored by Tecovas Boots. If you're tired of paying $700 for Tecovas boots, then get yourself some Tecovas. They are really, really, really high quality, and I wore them every single day of the Soul of America tour. I wore them and I got a lot of compliments. They're very comfortable. So check them out. They cut out the middleman, so you get all the savings. It's tecovasboots.com. TECOVAS boots.com. The episode is also brought to you by Impact Crates. Impact Crates are safety crates for your dog. They're made of aluminum. They're strong, safe, and secure. And my puppy, Muddy Waggers, who was sitting here in the ground during this interview, he traveled with me during the Soul of America tour in an Impact Crate. And if you check out Impact Crates and use code MUDDY20, MUDDY20, you get 20% off. They are very, very good. They're good for flying with, and they're collapsible, so they're portable. And for how sturdy and large mine was, it was very, very portable and very light. So check them out, Impact Crates. And the episode is also brought to you by Badger Mapping. Badger is an app for field salespeople, so it makes it easy for reps to manage their territories, to know where to focus their time, where to go. The way I used it is I mapped out the Soul of America tour using Badger Mapping, and I would put in all the places and all the people I had to interview, and it would help me plan the most efficient route for that. So check them out. If you tell them you found them on Small Business War Stories, they will give you 2 free months. Check out Badger Mapping. And like every episode of Small Business War Stories, this one is brought to you by Proven. Proven.com is a company I started, Proven, with my business partner, Sean. And it is a leading small business hiring tool. We focus exclusively on small businesses. That is our trade. So if you need to hire, you can post your job to Proven, and we distribute it to over 100 job boards. And we have thousands of small businesses that use Proven. There's a free trial. You should check it out. It's proven.com. And we really care about you having a great experience hiring, and we'll help you. We're always available to help you with your job post, to help you figure out how to get the most bang for your buck. Again, proven.com. Without further ado, I want to get into the episode 35 of Small Business War Stories with Mike Raspatello of October in Chicago, Illinois. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. This is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. And we are live here, and I am sitting today with my guest, Mike Raspatello, president of October. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to be here in Chicago, Illinois, and you're doing some really cool stuff First of all, cheers. We're cheering. We're drinking some of, it's Mother's Blood Orange Saison. Mother's was our guest at Springfield, Missouri, and they gave me some beer.
Saison's my favorite.
Which we're now drinking. It's
going
delicious.
through a phase.
But tell me about your business. What is it that October does, and how did it come to be?
So October's a beer website, a digital magazine that also throws beer events, beer dinners, beer festivals, kind of beer and music events where there's a unique tie-in from a beer to a concert. But going back in time, October was something a colleague of mine and I thought of last year, actually sitting around after the Super Bowl at some work-related event, maybe a little becoming a little tired of our day jobs and the things we were working on. We worked within a venture fund, and we were tasked with finding new investment opportunities that were tangential to beer, that lifted the beer category, that in some way supported and grew beer culture.
Yeah.
And what we realized is obviously, yes, we're going to go out and try to find the ideal partners and the people that we should be working with to further that. You know, there's the relationship with homebrew supply companies, home kind of what would it even be called, like home brewing, the some of the physical infrastructure as well. We invest in that, but there was not anything on the editorial side. There was a big white space where there's Bon Appetit for food, there's Eater for food, there's Wine Spectator for wine, there's Cigar Aficionado for cigars. There wasn't anything like that for the beer industry. And when someone told me that, when we were sitting around kind of thinking of what could be the next passion project that could benefit the company, I was like, bullshit. There's no way that doesn't exist. Sure. Beer has been hip and hot now for a handful of years.
Yeah.
There's no way this doesn't already exist. Dumb idea. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, man, take my word for it. It does not. He was a creative director. I was, partnership and more boring business guy at the company. So the next day I started doing the research, and sure enough, he was absolutely right. So, we realized that there was a place for this. There was a white space. And so the idea was then to go into ZX Ventures and propose that we would start one. We would create the highest end editorial destination for beer, and we would support that with an event business that would be a revenue positive for-profit event business that would both support the brand or support the editorial brand and be supported by the editorial brand.
Cool.
And we went around and we interviewed kind of the big media companies. We talked to Time, we talked to Turner, Thrillist, kind of the who's who, and kind of all along we were trying to get in to talk to Condé because naturally, due to the model we envisioned, Pitchfork was the ideal partner because of what they do.
So what's the connection to Pitchfork? Tell me more about that.
So essentially the partnership has ZX's support, essentially employing...
And ZX, we can lay out the landscape, ZX is the investment arm of InBev. Right.
Yes, but exactly that. They are an incubator, they are a venture fund, and they are supported by investment from AB InBev. No, by no means though do they exist to further the marketing objectives of AB InBev or do its bidding. They exist as a company that invests in other companies or fosters other companies that are beneficial to the industry as a whole.
Okay.
And frankly improve the experience of beer culture, of beer consumption, of things like that. And obviously it's an investment fund, so it's hoping to build value over time without question.
And they're the main investor in October.
They are the main investor in October. So they are an investor with a sweat equity and an upside benefit for the day-to-day operators, which are myself and Pitchfork, frankly. So I come from the venture fund and leading the team every day and working with the Pitchfork employees that are now half-time October employees, half-time Pitchfork employees, as well as a handful of people that are unique to the October team. So Pitchfork has been the folks that help us get live, help us run the magazine day to day. We are integrated fully into the Condé Nast development infrastructure, ad operations,
so is
things
Condé
like that.
Nast the owner of Pitchfork?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So fair. A year ago, Condé Nast acquired Pitchfork. So Pitchfork, joined the family. I'm not an expert on that industry, but certainly one of, if not the biggest publisher in the world. They, everyone from GQ, Bon Appetit, Vogue, not Esquire, Condé Nast Traveler. There's Golf Digest, Wired.
Yeah.
All of those are part of this family. So we benefit from the infrastructure Condé Nast has and the ability to plug this new magazine into their existing day-to-day operations.
So it's a really interesting dichotomy. You're running a small startup operation where you're facing a lot of the challenges that small businesses face, but you do have, in some ways, direct or indirect, the support of some major companies. So
exactly, you described it very well. It is certainly a first of its kind partnership. It's something that we were figuring out as we went. It was working with the partner to kind of understand what would be the right incentive structure to make it worth it to them to kind of engage in this experiment, because ultimately they're putting their name, credibility, opportunity cost, everything that goes with operating a magazine that has very significant growth objectives in year one, but building a magazine that they barely own. So they share in the upside, but at the end of the day, the IP and the brand is owned by the venture fund. And so that's a difficult dynamic, because it is very much the work of Pitchfork. It doesn't come to be without their vision, without their creative abilities, without their understanding of the reader. Obviously,
so
ZX does not
over
have
time, is that something where you want to develop more into a standalone entity? What's the plan?
At the end of the day, I want to create enough value for everyone involved so that we have options.
Okay.
Step one, it's hard for me to think past. Obviously we have 5-year goals and we have very specific EBITDA goals, even, on a quarter by quarter basis in the first year,
right.
Probably much to my chagrin and the chagrin of my team. But, our long-term vision is obviously to create the value, that we've kind of advertised to investors during the fundraising period. Yeah. But ultimately, we know that by doing that and the popularity we will have to accrue to get there are going to open so many opportunities that to kind of grow the business and evolve the business in ways we haven't thought of. At this point, it is a somewhat simple and straightforward model where we aim to make money 4 ways. Advertisement, digital advertising like any other online magazine, sponsored content, so kind of the modern stepchild of whatever digital advertising, so branded content, creating content series that run as advertorial on our site and other Condé properties, so that somewhat typical digital revenue.
Yeah.
And then on the event side, tickets and sponsorship. So
what kind of events are you doing?
So we have 2 event series that are released at this point. One is our music and beer series. So the idea there is you take an artist that has either opened a brewery or helped develop a beer concept or done something in the beer industry that is actually tied to a product or a brewery, and you throw an event where they perform, they premiere a new beer, they pour the beer they're involved in. It's always going to be some derivation of that, a concert with a unique beer and beer
cool.
tie-in. So the first one we did is probably is a perfect example that will be hard to replicate. But Run the Jewels, the hip hop group that has obviously gained in popularity in the last 3 or 4 years, collaborated with a Brooklyn brewery called Interboro to release a Run the Jewels themed branded IPA. So these were friends of theirs, I believe, and they created Stay Gold IPA. And obviously, due to their popularity and due to the credibility of the brewery itself, this was a very hot, limited time product. So this concert served as an opportunity to see a Run the Jewels show for the first time in Charlotte. For 2 years, but it also served as an opportunity to tap one of the limited 5 kegs that town would see.
Wow!
So they toured the beer around. The beer is available at a very small volumes straight out of the brew pub in Brooklyn and things like that. Cool. But you weren't getting it on the road anywhere. So that was the concept. It went really well. It was a couple.
I should put you in touch with the folks at Mother's Brewing in Springfield, Missouri. That's the beer we're drinking right now, and they have twice a year these big concerts. Where they bring in different artists and they release beers.
That's exactly the kind. So that's the exact kind of stuff we're doing. There will be a major festival we're putting on in early September, late August in Brooklyn. Okay. It will be a collaboration festival.
Sounds good. I'll be there.
Yeah, right. No, please do. Our guest, obviously. Yeah. But it'll be a collaboration of sorts, playing into the strengths and obviously the unique relationships that Pitchfork has. So the fact that they are obviously a major player in the music industry, and obviously have wonderful relationships with artists, journalists, people obviously on the business side as well. And then now are taking that credibility and building their relationships in beer, and people are obviously very, very quick to work with us due to the amazing people on the editorial side.
That's awesome.
And so these relationships are leading to our ability to kind of come out with programming that is unique, that it would be hard. People say you go to a music festival and there's shitty beer options. You go to a beer fest and there isn't good music. We have the opportunity to live in that middle space. And so we're throwing an event that's collaboration themed, where you'll have, a bunch of indie artists playing their sets, but also collaborating with one another on stage. You'll have breweries collaborating with one another for special edition beers or limited time beers at the festival. You'll have things like the Run the Jewels example I just mentioned, where you'll have, artists with some beer tie-in.
Yeah.
So, everywhere that music and beer can intersect will result in our party in Brooklyn. So
that's really cool. So is the music connection, is that relegated to events, or is that really coming to the magazine as well? And
both.
Okay.
It'd be, we always saw this as an opportunity to take what existed online, which was, sometimes very well written, but very kind of inside baseball beer industry news, like the dorkiest of the dorky, most most detailed and industry jargon laden content out there. Even the best of the best wasn't going to cross over to someone who just likes a Budweiser now and then sitting on their back porch. It was not content for that person. But there's a lot of amazing stories in there, and there's a lot of amazing writers and amazing publishers. One of which is now our executive editor, a guy named Michael Kaiser, who is the best voice online about the beer industry.
Cool. So let's talk beer.
Beer.
What's your take on the growth of craft beer over the last 20, really kind of 30 years, right? So they're early on, there were folks like Sierra Nevada that kind of like started, from Chico, and like maybe Dogfish is another one that comes to mind that's been around for a long time. And now it seems like everywhere, every town, everything, there's a craft beer. How do you kind of see what's happened over the last 20 years, and how do you see this going forward? Is this something that's going to plateau? Is this something, what's your take on the landscape?
Yep. So I would be lying, despite having worked at a beer company for 5 years and now heading a beer publication. I am by no means a historian expert on the subject, but I've watched the movies, I've read the books, I've been in the industry, I read the trades, and I know it to a degree. And I know there was obviously a kind of a surge and a fallout previously in the 90s, and then obviously what we all hear about now with the craft beer boom. And so there are, we actually published an article about this. There is a lot of alarmism that because the industry's growth is slowing, now by no means stopping, it's just slowing from, significant double-digit growth every year to closer to, right on the edge of single and double-digit growth. And so there was definitely panic, the bubble's bursting, and there's strong arguments why that's not the case. So I think what you're seeing is obviously there's always going to be fallout amongst businesses that kind of hop onto a trend and just aren't good operators or don't have the right geography or aren't reaching the right consumer. There's always going to be less than perfect startups that are shaken out of a situation like this. So people see the closings and they see things like that, and they mean okay, and they immediately think, okay, that means the growth of the industry is slowing. Well, maybe that person just didn't operate their business as well as they could have, and maybe that shakeout came from something else. So I think the industry is fine, and I think it's fine in a way that is going to finally reverse the tide of growth in spirits and wine relative to beer. Beer hasn't been as cool relative to those things of late, and I think the way the industry is going now is going to bring it back in the right direction.
Cool. And one of the things that makes things, cool and interesting is obviously like the whole independent vibe of it. What's your take on the fact that, I don't know, recently there was a conflict in San Diego where Ballast Point, which is, a very well-known company, they sold, which was viewed by many other major players, folks like Stone. They put up like a public thing saying like basically it felt betrayed by that, and they were never going to sell. To what extent is like the independent brewers and how is that tied to craft beer? And you have a lot of larger conglomerates buying up a lot of these breweries.
Yeah, I certainly have witnessed it pretty firsthand. Yeah. I think it is a trickier issue, and there's too much nuance to it for me to solve it here today. But I will say that obviously that story can go both the right and wrong direction. If the acquirer does not let that company retain its culture and starts trying to bastardize the uniqueness or the authenticity that brand created, and grow too quickly, or misapply what they're calling best practices to that brewery and their strategy, then obviously it can go the wrong way. But I have seen cases, both within our company or AB InBev and others, where it went very well, where a company was doing fine at creating demand. It was doing fine at creating culture internally, but it had capacity restraints and it had distribution constraints. And as someone who has no shortage of those two things, a big player, the big acquirer, could come in and make it work. So I think it can go both ways. I think there certainly have been companies, breweries that have been acquired and have proven that to the others, and that's why you're seeing more of it, because a lot of people say that, but you also don't hear many stories of those breweries turning down the money when it does come. So
that makes sense.
A lot of people have spoken to their desire to never sell out, and then reconsidered and found a way where selling out isn't the selling out they were afraid of.
Got it. Makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about, we're talking before the show about talking about conflicts of interest, right? So if you follow the money, InBev funds this fund which funds you, and you are putting out a publication about beer, and you're meant to remain independent. So, and combine that with the fact that Pitchfork on the music side has a reputation for very, to put it kindly, incisive reviews on the music front. Yep. So how do you retain that independence, and would you ever criticize an InBev product in the publication if you felt it was right?
Yeah, we do, and we have. That is a great question. I answer it every day for all the obvious reasons, exactly what you just laid out. So when we pitched this idea, that was literally the first thing we said. This has to have full editorial independence. Anything less will be a breach of contract in whatever relationship is created to create October. It wasn't called October then, but that was paramount to what we were doing from minute one. So anything less than that would have not been acceptable, and we wouldn't even have had meeting 2 with ZX Ventures to discuss this project. So it was encouraging that the company would be okay with that idea and supportive of that idea, and frankly it makes perfect sense, because their objective obviously is to make money. They're a venture fund, but also in doing so build the beer industry. It is not their job there's a whole organization dedicated to growing Bud Light and Budweiser and Stella Artois. They got it under control.
They have a slight marketing budget.
Exactly. They're doing that.
Yeah.
But the idea of ZX Ventures was to take a chunk of money, make it into more money, and grow interest in beer culture as well. So they can use their own mandate to remind themselves why it's okay. So, however, we knew that consumers would immediately sniff this out. So we had to, of course, in our first piece of content and all the press releases, we were very honest about that dynamic and the fact that, like, contractually, ZX Ventures can never tell the magazine what to talk about, what not to talk about. They speak with their checkbook. At the end of the terms of the contract, they decide if they like this in their portfolio, and they make a decision for it to remain in the portfolio. But in between those decisions, they have no influence, and it's contractual. So the way we had to prove that to the consumer is just by living it and by doing it. And we're now 75 pieces of content in. We've shat on AB InBev things. I think on Super Bowl Sunday we had a writer write a very very well thought out criticism of Budweiser advertising.
Incisive.
Very incisive, very pitchforky. But yeah, we've said good things about our beers. We've said good things about our competitive beers, and we've shat on our beers and shat on competitive beers. Yeah. I have occasionally gotten credit. There was one thing a colleague was like, I know we're not supposed to say this, but come on, guys, you gave Blue Moon a good rating. I'm like, hey, that's what that's how this works. That's the independence we have to live every day.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, Pitchfork. I mean, have you ever read the Onion thing?
Dude.
Pitchfork gives music. Keep
Go ahead.
No, you go. You tell the story.
So we just moved offices.
Okay.
So I get the cool kind of be part of history and kind of the honor of working out of the Pitchfork office and launching this. And so they've been in this historic space now for like 5 years. And 2 days ago was the last day ever in that office. We're moving into a more combined Conde Pitchfork environment in Merchandise Mart. But anyway, hanging above the toilet was a blown up front page of the Onion with that article.
Yeah.
Pitchfork gives music 6.8. It was like something like the last 100 years all come off as derivative of pavement or whatever.
Exactly.
So there's great quotes in it, and the funny thing is the guys quoted are people I now know. So like the fake quotes,
the real people
are like the editor in chief and the
That's funny. Yeah, any of our listeners, listeners that have never, you should go and search for what is it? The Onion Pitchfork music review, because it's really funny. I can't possibly do it justice because it's been just a little bit too long since I read it, but it's damn funny.
It's also as encouraging to walk in there as the new guy, so to speak, and see that they embraced making fun of themselves, that was hanging in the office. Like, you never know. I didn't know the Pitchfork guys. I was a fan, but I didn't know them personally, so they can poke fun at themselves as well. So that's always good to know.
Do you have any good industry corny jokes? Any
industry jokes, man? I don't know about industry jokes. I might have to get back to you on that one.
No
but
worries, man.
I have some amazing industry stories.
Okay,
I would say
you got the wacky stories.
I would say the things that are such a trip about the beer industry is the very obvious access to cool stuff because you're Budweiser or Bud Light. You end up in the weirdest, most unexpected on side stage with like Snoop Dogg, your CMO, and like your CMO's 85-year-old cousin or something like that. And you're just in these very odd, and there's like a NASCAR racer who's there too. There's always these. They throw amazing events. Yeah. Even the biggest probably critics of big beer can't deny they know how to involve themselves in a good party. Yeah. And getting to go to some of those and just be in these odd places where like celebrities you would never expect to see next to each other, like getting kind of drunk together and stuff like that. So that's been extremely good.
What are the two most contrasting, wackiest celebrity pairing you've ever seen?
Oh man, all right. So at a Super Bowl event, I had a shot with Billy Bush next to having a shot with McLovin.
There you go.
That's the last one. That was like 2 months ago.
That's a good. Who would win in a boat race competition between those two?
Yeah, that's a fair question. There was it's also Jon Hamm. That's the other cool thing about working for Budweiser is Jon Hamm, the Mad Men actor, is like a St. Louisan and a big Budweiser fan. So he's always like talked at our company events and things like that, but I'd never met him personally. Yeah. I walk up to him at said Super Bowl party, and I like every other guy, I go to shake his hand, and he doesn't give a shit, obviously, but he's he's good at it. He's good at being a celebrity, even if he doesn't care about the stranger in front of him. The minute I tipped him off to like, hey man, I saw you at this, I worked at Budweiser, we were best friends. It was great. Right. It was the greatest example of someone having true St. Louis pride, and it almost made me I'm not gonna say it made me miss St. Louis or anything, but it reminded.
I just came from St. Louis. St. Louis is cool.
It is.
You prefer Chicago?
Yeah, anything. When I was living there, I was itching for the West Coast. Now then I was on the West Coast, and now I'm excited to be back. I'm ready to be a suburban dad.
Yeah, you're a new father, right?
Somewhat, yeah. 2.5 years and coming fast again.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, man. Thank you.
That's awesome. What's it like to do business in Chicago?
It's very comfortable for me in a way because this is where I had 2 startups previously, so I had all of my successes and failures and all of my stupid decisions happened here, and it all worked out, and I survived, and blah, blah, blah. And I know so many more people. I know if there's anything I need, it's not a LinkedIn message of, hey, I work at this big company, blah, 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 we're working on this, and I get a response because of the, company associated with my name on LinkedIn. Here, I actually know.
Like, hey, it's Mike.
Yeah, like it's Mike. We've known each other since we were children,
Yeah.
you know, and you're now working
Did you
in
grow
this.
up here?
Yeah, I grew up here. I grew up 6 blocks from where we're sitting right here.
Are you serious?
So I've become
you're a White White Sox fan then?
I am a White Sox fan,
must have.
yes.
I mean,
Well, no, actually, this hood is more Cubs.
Really?
Yeah, because
I
we're
thought
straight
closer.
west.
Okay.
We're straight west,
okay,
so you're not far enough south right now for it to be White Sox
Okay, maybe
territory.
yeah. Okay. I
So-
came from Naperville. That's more White Sox territory.
No, that would be way more Cubs. Yeah.
Wow.
You're like Northwest, so that would be super Cubs.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
That obviously tells you about my limited knowledge of
This would be the best way to put it. If you, and this is the most acknowledged thing, and it's the White Sox fan base, or the Cubs fan base, has always been kind of the traditionally North Shore, waspy, suburban ideal. White Sox was more South Side, which traditionally was Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic, and Hispanic. So there's a very the White Sox fan base is a much more diverse one than the Cubs. That's kind of this stereotype.
So you're a White Sox fan.
I'm a White Sox
fan. Did you
fan.
celebrate the Cubs winning the World Series?
You could not, man, because you have so many people. 80% of the people I've ever cared about in the world are Cubs fans. And cared more about that than anything, non-family ever in their lives, probably. So just you're wrapped up in that, and you're so happy for your friends and family who are into it. Yeah.
Awesome. How long have you been running October now?
It's been in planning since last June, and it's been a live business for 2 months.
Cool. I am sure that in that almost 9 months or so that since last June, some things must have gone sideways and must have gone. So can you tell me about something that went really wrong and how'd you handle it?
Well, I think the main thing that I wouldn't say wrong, but the biggest challenge has been making the partners comfortable with this new structure. It's a unique deal to Condé Nast, and it's a unique deal to ZX Ventures, and there, of course, there's always going to be growing pains with trying to create new structures within an organization that's very good at their existing structures. Right. So that has been the challenge, kind of teaching the investors how to consider, manage, judge, and feel comfortable with ownership of a media and event brand, and then also ensuring that the folks on the October side understand the balance we have to strike in kind of over educating or kind of over communicating to the people involved, because that's to ZX's credit, they took a gigantic leap of faith in investing something that is so outside their realm of expertise, and admittedly so. And that they realize that this can be a positive value creator for both the industry and themselves as a venture fund is testament to their stated mission and them living that mission. So that's very cool, and I'm so grateful for that. But it's a challenge, because every day you're kind of teaching one side how to think of the other, and vice versa. So, but the other challenge, the one more thing I would say, is I was nervous coming out of the gate that everyone would dismiss this as some sham by Anheuser-Busch or some quasi-marketing Trojan horse. And when that day passed, I immediately realized that even I was underestimating the credibility of Michael Kaiser and Eno Serras, our editors, and then the Pitchfork team and its reputation. People quickly understood that those two writers and the writers we had at launch, the journalists that were already known as Bon Appetit guys and New York Times guys and people with reputations and followings, that is, as soon as they saw that those people were doing it, and they saw that Pitchfork was behind it, and they saw that we were very quick to talk positively about AB InBev competitors and maybe not so positively about ourselves, it did so much to make every day after that easier.
Okay. So basically, maybe that fear was bigger than the reality of it, given the level of authenticity and honesty that you would bring it to the table.
Exactly. I think I underplayed to folks how worried we all were about that, but it was obviously the biggest concern. And once we got over that, the scary part was largely over. Now we just need to grow and continue cranking out a good product.
Based on what your experience with this and your other businesses you've started, what would you say is your number one lesson learned or piece of advice that you would have for people who are either currently operating small businesses or interested in starting one?
Yeah, don't be afraid to acknowledge mistakes and kind of redirect and evolve and pivot and all the buzzwords out there. But
Okay.
I think being overly persistent on an uninformed decision that you're learning very quickly might have not been the right decision is, might win you a short-term argument with your partners, but it's certainly not good for the long-term health of the brand. So
Makes sense.
I certainly have learned that the hard way. We were the dumbest founders in the world when, with my first business with some of my buddies, we did some cool things. We had some great ideas, but we also were some terrible managerial decisions.
I think there's a lot of things you can read about, but until you actually make the mistakes yourself, it's pretty hard.
We were straight out of, I was straight out of business school as like a 23-year-old thinking like, oh, we're not getting in any meetings if that business plan is in 127 pages and has the perfect font in the index.
Yeah, the best definition I've ever heard of a business plan is the one thing that's absolutely guaranteed not to happen.
Yeah, yes.
Cool, awesome. Is there anything else that you want our audience to know about your business, about October? Where can people find you? What are your social media handles, website, and so forth?
Yeah, well, I want you to read it. I want you to tell us what else we should be writing about. We are found at oct.co, oct.co, where you can find us. We're pretty good in Google results as well, Google search results. Our handles are at ReadOctober on all platforms. And what we want is for you guys to recommend ideas for events we could throw, people we should be talking to, beers we should be looking at. The content doesn't sprout out of the ground. We have to create, high-end editorial every single day, more than one piece of it, 52 pieces of content a month.
That's a lot.
And, 20 major events this year. So that stuff, don't want anyone to take for granted what it takes to actually come up with good ideas and create stuff and make sure people show up.
Well, it sounds like you're off to a great start, and it sounds like you have your hands full. So best wishes for you in the future of October, and thank you so much for being a guest in Small Business War Stories.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, thank you. Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. This is where